welcome back to the My Slice of Life podcast. How has your week been? Tell the truth, how has your week been? Because I'll tell you this, I feel like I've been through the ringer a wee bit. Is that the right phrase? I say these things and I think I've got it wrong. Anyway, bottom line is, I feel like I've had a couple of weeks rammed into one, and I'm glad I'm recording this. It's the end of my week. I know this goes out on a Monday, so I'll pretend it's Monday, but all that waffling, God, what a way to start an episode. All that waffling is nothing to do with what I'm talking about. This week, I want to talk about weeds, but I want to talk about them with a different view to it. So bear with me here because I've been doing a bit of thinking. I put out a video on YouTube and it was to do with the allotment, and part of it was showing the weeds that I have. I've got this spreading one. I've got a few that spread. I've discussed them before. And I was telling the viewers how demoralised I was starting to feel. And, you know, when you just don't feel like you can ever get ahead. I think that's the bottom line where I was going with all of it. I could just never get ahead. This weed was always in front of me, always ahead of me. And I said, something along those lines. Anyway, I got a comment and it stopped me in my tracks because the guy said, if you got rid of all your weeds, you'd be lonely. Now, he said lonely. I would change it slightly and I would say you'd be bored. Now, I'm going to come back to that, but it's really made me think about our weeds and how we perceive them, how we view them, and what they're really for. So, with all that in mind, I did a little bit of digging, if you'll pardon the pun. For a no-dig gardener. Yes, I'm a no-dig gardener as much as I can. I try my best. So I thought there has to be more than this than just getting on our bloody nerves. There has to be a reason for these things. And there are. But, first of all, hold on, I've got some notes with me. Here are my notes. Very professional sounding. When it comes to weeds, right, we all know we want to get rid of them because they're competing for light for our own plants. They're competing for the water, and this year especially, I think pretty much everywhere, that's been quite a scarce commodity at certain times. Not here anymore because we've had downpour after downpour this week, which actually, by the by, totally nothing to do with what I'm talking about. But we had major fires not that far from here earlier in the week. You might have heard about it if you're in the UK and mentioned that there was some wildfires in the Highlands. There are such vast areas up here of just basically moorland. There's nothing. And it was so dry. I don't know, there was 2 separate fires. And actually there was a fire in the woods that we go to sometimes. And that only got put out, I think it was 2 weeks ago or something. And that is where they're going to be filming the new Matt Damon film, I believe it is. Starting around now, sometime beginning of July. So that's nothing to do with what I was telling you about. But the water that we had, the rainfall that we had, apparently really, really helped put the fires out. So that tells you how much we've had. But yes, weeds, coming back to that, weeds will compete for water with our own plants in our gardens. They also compete for space. Obviously, we're always told, space out your plants. They need this much room to grow. Well, they can't grow if they're being strangled by something else. And, of course, nutrients. The weeds will take up the nutrients. Now, these are things we already know. And I'm going to challenge you now, despite what I've just said, to think of weeds as a good thing. Potentially a good thing. I've got it in my mind that we've been thinking about them all wrong. They're not the enemy. They're not competition. They're trying to tell us something. And we just haven't learned how to decode what it is they're telling us. I've also got it in my mind that they are useful for something else, but I'm going to come back to that at the end. I won't forget because that part has really been on my mind this week. So what I want to do, I took some notes off a site online. I can't remember which site it is off the top of my head. I know it's very poor of me, but like I said, I've had a bit of a week. I will find out what site it is and make a note of it in the description for you if you want to go and check it out. So thank you to that site. I will not read out word for word, but I want to just point out a few of the weeds that they mention and what they could be telling us about our soil. We know certain plants that we want to grow prefer certain soil types, and so do weeds. I mean, they're just plants, aren't they? So if you've got a particular thing that shows up time and time again, it's telling you something. And it's time we listened. And there was something else I wanted to tell you, and it's gone right out my head. There's a phrase I've heard recently, and it's brain fart, and that just describes what happens to me perfectly. My brain just goes, and it's away. Anyway, if it comes back to me, I will share it. In the meantime, yes, I remember. Oh, for goodness sake, I don't know if I'll leave all this in or not. This is going to be quite a weird episode, I can tell. I remembered what it is I wanted to tell you. Nature doesn't like a void. It doesn't like empty space. And we like nice, neat, tidy beds. And if we're not growing anything at that particular time, we want it clear, empty looking, but tidy and clean, ready for us to use. How many times have you prepared a bed in your garden, whether it's for veg or flowers or herbs, whatever it is you're growing, but you've prepared your bed, you've weeded it, you've cleared it, you've tidied it, maybe you've put your compost on the top or whatever it is you're putting on the top, and you think, there, boom, done. You go back the next day, or 2 days later, whatever it is, basically you turn your back, and when you look at it again, there's weeds coming up all over the place. And you think, how? Nature doesn't like what we like. We want things pristine sometimes, and that's not going to happen. So if you leave a gap, if you leave your nice, clean bed, she's going to fill it with something. I would suggest, and I'm going to try this year, that if you do have an area that you want to leave clear, in inverted commas, say over the winter, use green manures. Let the soil grow something for you. We've got ones, you can grow it and then the frost will kill it. You don't even have to dig it in. It can just die off in the frost and then lie on the ground, on the top for you, and feed the soil that way. So I'm going to suggest you do that because our soil wants to grow something. And if we don't provide it with something to grow, nature is going to do it itself. So I'm going to go through now. I got there eventually. I'm going to go through now a couple of the weeds that are probably the most common and what it could well be telling us about our soil. Oh, I need my glasses on for this. I actually got quite a list. I was surprised. Now, one thing I will say, the very first thing that I found on this site, and a few other sites, because I did go through a few, weeds with the deep tap roots, things like dandelion and burdock, they're apparently letting us know that the soil is compacted. It's lacking in water, air, and nutrients. But those roots that are going down, that's nature's way of trying to repair that soil. If you think about it, those roots are going in, they're creating structure, they're putting air in, and they're also going to be helping with the nutrient level there. And it will allow water to go in. So if our soil is really compacted like that, you're going to get dandelions because nature's saying, "Hoi, problem here, mate. I'm coming to fix it." So that's one thing. Another one that's mentioned on this site is bindweed, and it says that grows in crusty or compacted soil. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to go through quite a few of these. It's a list, but I'm trying to pick out the more common ones. Chickweed. Now, I don't know about you. I have seen chickweed everywhere this year. I put down homemade compost and I left it. And when I went back, I think it was just about 10 days later, covered in chickweed. And apparently it likes rich soil that's high in nitrogen. And it will grow well in alkaline, compacted soil. But that makes sense because, like I say, I had just put down this homemade compost. So obviously it was a rich soil and that was having the time of its life. Common groundsel or groundsel, I don't know that one. Apparently it's an indicator of rich soil. Have you ever heard the saying, if you have groundsel, you have good soil? Is that meant to rhyme? Have I said that completely wrong? Don't know. I'm not aware of it. Crabgrass, that grows where the soil has been depleted of nutrients and is low in calcium. Now things like dock and goldenrod, they are going to grow in wet, poorly draining soil. So if you have that, that's an indicator you're going to have to do something about the drainage in your growing area. If you find you're getting moss turning up, it says here that moss of most kinds, that indicates a soggy, acidic soil that's also low in nutrients. So you're going to want to actually feed your soil, and if it's too acidic, get that lime in and you can actually turn that around and get rid of that. Moss, as we know, it likes moist conditions. Sunny, dry places don't get moss because of that. So if you find that you're getting moss, think about your garden. I've got moss in my garden. I know in the front, actually it's only in the front, it's not in the back. So I know it gets quite soggy in there. So I've not aerated it that well because I don't mind the moss in the front. That's just me. Now, something that I've actually grown on purpose this year, so I was quite surprised to see it on the list, and that's mullein. And it likes acidic soil with low fertility. I've only got a couple of mullein plants, but I have seen on sites, especially in America, that it can grow quite a lot in certain areas, which I wasn't aware of here. But then again, I've only recently been aware of what I'm looking for, so maybe I've just been walking past it and didn't have a clue. I'm growing it on purpose. I'm going to use it as a herb. So that's slightly different. And it does say common mullein indicates you might need to make your soil more alkaline. So again, get that lime out, because if it's too acidic, you're going to get your mullein growing. Now the next one on the list that I'm going to mention is oxalis, or wood sorrel. And that indicates low calcium and high magnesium. And it also says common wood sorrel, which you might mistake for clover, shows that your soil might need a calcium treatment. Now, I've got sheep sorrel. I call it spreading sorrel. It's got a few different names, but it is also known as sheep sorrel, and that spreads everywhere. And I was looking up while I was, searching for this episode. In fact, I started off thinking, how do I get rid of it? And then I thought, no. And I typed in, what conditions does sheep sorrel like to grow in? And it turns out it likes quite acidic soil, which makes sense because in that bay I'm growing strawberries, but at the top I'm growing blueberries, who also like to grow in acidic soil. Now I could either sprinkle lime in the places where I'm not growing blueberries, but you see when it comes to the calcium, a good way of doing it, save up your eggshells. Now there's a guy that I watch on YouTube, Terry King. I can't remember the full name of his channel, my mind's just gone blank again. It's Terry King, I think it's Terry King Allotment Gardener. It's Gardening on a Budget. I will put a link in the description because my brain's melting. Anyway, he does use eggshells. I mean, I've been using eggshells for a while, and I've always heard people say bake them in the oven. He says he doesn't, he just dries them in the air, and then you grind it, like blitz them. I've got a hair blitzer, so blitz them whatever you can to a fine powder. Use that for your calcium. He actually puts it in when he's planting his tomatoes and a few other things. But if you have plants that need calcium, or if you have an area, like I was just saying, where it's saying, you're going to have to maybe give it a calcium treatment if you find you're getting a lot of wood sorrel or common sorrel, that kind of thing, get your eggshells ground up and sprinkle them everywhere. And that could be all you need. Because I think, instead of thinking, how do I get rid of these weeds? We need to turn it around and start thinking, what soil conditions do these weeds like? And then not provide that. As much as we can, turn it around, turn it on its head. What do they need to grow? Well, I'm not going to give you it then. And I think by doing that, we could save ourselves a lot of heartache and a lot of time. I'm not saying you wouldn't have to get rid of the weeds anyway that you have already, but maybe we could diminish them by gradually changing the condition of our soil. This is how I've been thinking this week. I've actually been putting a lot of thought into this, believe it or not. What else do we have that I would have heard of? Plantain. Again, I have one big plantain that I am growing on purpose. And it's growing well, which is a bit of a worry because it says it likes compacted, sour soil with low fertility and often indicates heavy clay. But I have sandy soil and I'm growing it in the one area on purpose, and I don't feed that area. So, it's just that one patch. I don't feed it, I don't do anything to it, so I'm just letting it be. And it is trying to spread, but I'm trying my best to keep on top of that. Now, I haven't heard of this one. Quack grass. Do you have quack grass? What the heck is that? Anyway, it will grow in heavy clay or compacted soil. Queen Anne's lace will grow where the soil is poor. It can indicate, a poor dry soil, whereas ragweed can indicate low fertility. So if you're finding a lot of ragweed, you know that you need to increase the fertility of your soil. Just give it a good feed with homemade compost or something. That should do the trick. Stinging nettle is also something that I grow on purpose, and when I tell you it grows round my compost bin, it will make sense when I read out from the sheet here that I got from the website. I can't remember. I will link to it in the description. That stinging nettle grows in rich, acidic soil. Now, that does make sense. Okay. The more I read this, the more I'm thinking my soil is too acidic. It's sandy, it's getting richer because I've been feeding it a lot, but too acidic. So I'm going to have to put more lime in, because sheep sorrel specifically is on this list, and that indicates dry, sandy, acidic soil depleted of nutrients and low in calcium. So I'm going to do the egg thing around the top. Oh, that's quite good to know. My soil is sandy, and because of that it dries out quickly, because the water just runs through it. Having said that, I've worked so hard this year. If you've been keeping up with my garden year, you would know this. But I showed it more on my YouTube gardening channel. Last autumn and winter, put manure everywhere I could, homemade compost everywhere I could. But obviously it's on the acidic side, so that explains why I'm getting a lot of these. And another one which I'm growing on purpose actually is yarrow. And again, I'm growing it because I want the leaves for herbal treatments, but it's said to grow on poor, dry, sandy soil where little else will grow. Also, where potassium and fertility are low, which is strange because I do have other things growing there, but it does seem a bit happy. So I'm going to have to really take a note of this. And this is what I've been trying to think about this week, and this is what I want to get across really for this episode. It's not so much I want those weeds gone, it's what are they telling me about my soil? And I have found out through doing this that my soil is too acidic. There are patches of it that still aren't rich enough. I need to feed it more. But I need to be careful that, the acid side of it doesn't run away with it. So I need to get lime in, and I need to get calcium in, which I can use the eggshells for. So weeds that are going to indicate acidic soil, we've got plantain, sorrel, moss, hawkweed, daisy, mullein, oxalis. Then it said plants like Queen Anne's lace, chickweed, spotted spurge, never heard of it, chicory and garlic mustard prefer alkaline soil with a high pH. Now that's interesting because I got garlic mustard this year in my front garden, so I must take a note of that. Yellow nutsedge, goosegrass, goldenrod, moss, speedwell, ground ivy and dock, they will indicate a wet, poorly drained area. And things that are more likely to go where it's hot and drier are things like thistle, redroot pigweed, garlic mustard and stinging nettle. Now those that like tough soil are things like dandelions, bindweed, chicory, goosegrass, crabgrass, chickweed, knotweed, spurge and plantain. And in fertile soil, you're going to have that indicated by things like dandelions, fennel, mullein, clover. If your soil is nitrogen rich, you're going to find things like lamb's quarters, oxalis, chickweed and henbit. And I think that's the key. I think it's looking for more than one weed. I think that's something to really pay attention to if you are getting a few different weeds showing up. The first step is going to be find out what they are, because identification is key to all of this. I I'm not great at it, I have to confess. I'm learning, I'm trying, but I have so many, as we all do, I suppose. But if we can identify what we have, and then if we can find out not how can I get rid of these damn weeds, look them up and find out what growing conditions do they like. And then from that, the ones you've identified, if they're coming back and saying, these are the kind of plants that like infertile soils or marshy ground, compacted soil, that kind of thing, that will tell you what you're dealing with in your garden. And from there, you can find out how to fix it. So how does that sound to you? I think this is a key idea. I really think we've been doing this all wrong all this time. I don't think we should be looking at how do I get rid of it. I really think we should be looking at what is it and what does it want. Because then we know what not to give it. But there is one more thing that I've really been thinking about this week when it comes to weeds. And it almost pains me to say it. And I did say at the beginning, I think we've been thinking about weeds all wrong. And this particular thing, I really think, for me anyway, I've possibly had them all wrong. I can only say I do. If you're the same, drop me a comment and let me know if this is resonating with you in the slightest, because I'd like to know I'm not the only one. But I need to see weeds as not the enemy anymore. I don't want to see them as the enemy. I need to see them, and I'm starting to see them, not just as soil indicators like I've just gone through, that's one side of it, but I'm starting to see them as my motivation. And that might sound strange because you'd think you're motivated by what you want to grow and, what you want your growing spaces to be for and all that kind of plans, the garden plans that we make. And that is part of it. But when I've really thought about it, I've had to think what has motivated me recently to get my backside up to that allotment and do something. Now it's nearly fully planted, so it's not the planting out. But I've had an area I've been dealing with. It was actually the strawberry patch that I mentioned that sheep sorrel is all over. And I knew what I wanted to do with that patch, but I just was never doing it. And it got to the point, last week I made a real start on it. And I thought, I'm going to get rid of this sheep sorrel. And I tidied nearly that whole bay. I haven't quite finished it, because it was quite a big job. But ripping out that sheep sorrel, and it spreads. I'll put in bits of the video I made for my gardening channel in this one, just so I can show you bits and pieces of what I'm talking about, because this thing really does spread. But it really motivated me to get the job done. I cleared so much. I picked loads of strawberries, and I wasn't just clearing, that particular weed. I was tidying up the whole patch. I was tidying up my gooseberry, I was tidying up my red currant bush, I was checking out my blueberries, having a real good look around. I did loads, and then I mulched all round all of it with wood chip. Now, like I say, I've got a little strip to go, but that patch is looking amazing compared to how it was just a week ago. And it really does choke me to say this, but it's all thanks to that bloody sheep sorrel. That motivated me so much that I've nearly finished a bay that I wasn't even going to start on yet. And now I'm going to start on the other side because the bloody thing spread over there. But again, I'm not seeing it as the enemy, even though it might sound it like I am, but I'm not. I'm seeing it as it's my kickstarter. It's my motivator. It's like that irritating coach going, come on, give me some more. And so, yeah, I'm on fire for this. I'm going to beat this thing. I'm going to get that job done. I'm going to make it look so good this year, the plot. I'm going to make it look the best it ever has. And it's all thanks to my weeds. So I hope that has given you something to think about this week. I hope that instead of seeing them as the enemy, we can now start to see weeds as indicators of what's really going on in our soil and guides as to what we need to do to fix that problem and get the soil that we want and that our plants really need. And to give us that great big kick up the rear end that, let's face it, sometimes we do need. I'd love to know what you think of this idea. If you think I'm completely wrong, tell me. If you're sitting thinking, I've never thought of it like this, drop me a line, let me know. If you can't do that, tell someone else that you know is a gardener to listen to this episode, and let's just get this idea spreading like a weed. Yes, I said it, I know. It's quite late when I'm recording this, and I like corny jokes, but I will leave you now. I will not torture you anymore with my corny jokes. I hope that has given you something to think about this week. I'm delighted if you've made it this far. I am delighted that you did, because I really think this could help so many of us in our gardens. Don't forget to use the links in the description and subscribe if you haven't already. That is the best way to make sure that you don't miss out. I'll be back next week with another episode, so do not forget to come back for that. But until then, you take care of yourself.